Yes.
Hello, can you hear me
Yes.
now? Okay,
Okay.
but
So,
but you
when,
can't see me.
no, yeah, we can see you.
You can see me because
Yes.
I dressed up for the occasion. I want you to see me, and I even had my hair cut.
I noticed. I noticed.
Aba, international yata ito, so might as well look good.
Of course. And we're recording it
Yes,
for posterity and we'll share it
yes. And
with
if
the.
people are convinced of this ventilator, then this is probably a good way for them to know more about it.
Yes, absolutely. It was, I learned something during the rehearsal. It's quite an impressive equipment.
And maybe Doc Buddy can tell us how many neonates has that machine saved here in the Philippines.
Oh, a lot,
Yun. Yeah.
countless.
Yun.
That's the
That's what.
common comment I receive, that they're thanking the ventilator because it has saved a lot of lives. That
Yep.
is,
Yep.
and of course that's very heartening to hear. There's not
Yep.
much return in this work except, of course, the gratitude of people.
Yep. Very much so, Doc. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Tito. You have been a very important participant of this project. I know that. Everybody should know that also.
So,
Tito,
Not 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 necessary, Doc. I was just doing my part in helping our newborn units who have a hard time struggling to be able to at least have a chance at living. Thank you very much, Doc, for your help and
you're
all your
welcome.
co-inventors. Alex Paran is here. Uh, I don't know. I have not seen anybody else.
Hello, everyone.
There's Alex. He's a professor in mechanical engineering,
I
part of the development team until now.
Oh, that's
Yes.
great. So I'm looking at the clock, and it's 1 minute after the top of the hour. So I think we'll just go ahead and start it, and I can admit people as they come. Let me introduce myself. My name is Effie Hall. My maiden name was Santa Romana. I was a UP graduate 1966, and in UPSCA from 62 to 66. Our group here, we call ourselves Sumbayan, and it started about August of last year. There are quite a few, there are a few Upskans here in the Midwest, and we had gathered around summertime, mainly to greet people who were celebrating their birthdays July, August. And since we couldn't do it last August, we decided that we would greet each other on the Zoom. And then we kind of enjoyed it. And there were about, slowly a group of about 10 to 12 started to grow. And in time, we decided to make a monthly thing out of it, and to have guests and to have a specific topic, because that was a good way for us to get to know what our college friends have done in the intervening years, because many of us had not seen each other for 40 some years. Many of us are retired now, and we were all busy, of course, with our lives and careers, and now we had the time to renew acquaintance, and so that had been a wonderful experience. So tonight is a very special night, and that is because of our guest, and you know who our guest is. Most of you know him. We normally devote some time just to touch base and what we call sharing of joys and concerns. A lot has happened, of course, in the world. We do it monthly, and a lot has happened in the world in the last month, and we'll not go into that. But a lot has happened too in our own lives, and this is an opportunity to just share. We have two birthday celebrants to note. Cynthia Calhesan, August
Mm.
17, and Erwin Gomez, Dr. Erwin Gomez, August 24. And I don't know if they're here with us, and if they're here, happy birthday.
happy birthday
Happy
to you.
birthday. Happy birthday. June.
And if there are others who are celebrating their birthday in August, happy birthday to you too. In the last month, we lost two fellow UPSCans. Tiggy Barcelona.
Oh,
He's
Tiggy?
yeah, Tiggy.
Talaga
He
na.
is an Ateneo high school graduate. Don't exactly know what year he
Yeah.
graduated in UP.
UP. UP Mechanical Engineering. I think
Right.
64.
Oh, 64.
Yeah,
He
I think
passed
so.
away. Yeah, he passed away a
Talaga.
couple of weeks ago. Alex Rosell
Yeah, Alex Santos.
Santos, who was the husband of Miren Dumlao.
Miren, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so we remember
Uh,
them for their
yes.
friendship during our early days. Anyone else who would like to share some joys and concern or news, good news about what's happened in the last month?
Maybe during the Q&A, they can
Okay,
probably think it over. Yeah.
yeah, we can do that. Well, we can go in now into our program, and so I'd like to ask Lily to introduce our guest speaker. So Lily, can you hear? Can you hear me? You have to unmute yourself. Lily, unmute yourself. So everyone is muted except Buddy and me. And I see Tito is not either. So
Oh,
Lily,
there you
okay,
go.
good.
Okay, fine. All right. Before starting, I thought I would like to take this opportunity to thank two people who have made this possible. One is Erwin Gomez, Dr. Erwin Gomez, who reassured me that yes, Dr. Body is a fine human being. You can ask him to make a presentation. And they said, okay, so he is mabait and he's not suplado. We will send him an invitation. And
Correct
but
ka
the
dyan.
invitation itself was sent by, is she here?
Who?
Nanette Honko.
Yeah, I saw Nanette.
She's here. Nanette was the one who reached out to Buddy, and when she didn't hear for about a week, I asked her again, and now she persisted. And finally, I heard from Dr. Buddy saying that yes, what you want me to talk about? My invention? Yeah, straight to the point, you know. Okay, our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Enrique Ostrea Jr. He's someone whom I would call a UP thoroughbred. And the
Yep.
reason is one of us, a member of a small group of people I know who went all the way in their education to UP, grade school, high school, college. And of course, in his case, it includes a College of Medicine. And this has to do with the fact that their parents were members of the faculty of
Mm.
UP. And his father was the head of the Department of Metallurgy. Is that correct, buddy? Your father?
Mining.
Uh,
Mining and metallurgy.
Mining. You do know that the incoming moderator, June Kalayasan, your father was his professor.
Right.
That's what he
Right.
said. And then, and your mother was with the College of Pharmacy, correct?
My
So on
mother,
both
yes.
sides,
Yeah.
you had this, and accordingly, your father wanted you to be an engineer, just like him, but it must have been your mother's influence which made you go into the healing, pharmacy and medicine. So, but I think, well, later on we can see the influence of your father on the way you went about with your career. But anyway, we had asked all the other members of our group to please read as much as you can on Google because there's a lot of material on Buddy. I'm not sure they all did that, but to summarize, after you graduated from the College of Medicine, you were accepted at Harvard University for your residency in pediatrics. And from then on, you went to Johns Hopkins for your fellowship in neonatology. That's what I understand. And then you embark on a dual career of both treating patients as well as teaching at Wayne State University. So the details are all in Google. I'm just going through quickly on this thing. You have received numerous awards and citations from different countries, different institutions, and in the Philippines. So, but you never forgot where you came from. And I think that's the unusual thing. You regularly return to the Philippines to teach at the medical school, to visit hospitals all over the country, and to train a new crop of neonatologists in the latest practices in the profession. In the meantime, true to your engineering DNA, you also became an inventor. Among the earliest ones are the best known ones was the meconium drug test that you had, which methodically analyzes the stool of newly born infants and they can easily detect traces of elements, usually for drug abuse, showing up. And methodically, so the sooner you discover this, the sooner the baby can be helped, because it is possible that if left unattended for a while, that they could actually harm the baby's health or life. So that's one example of the inventions you have, and there's more, but I guess you are most famous, and we are seeing you here for the Ostreavent. About 15 years ago, you noted that many hospitals in the Philippines were badly in need of the most basic equipment to meet the needs of its patients, especially the prematurely born. And it was the sight and reality of the situation that compelled you to tinker and design a ventilator that would be useful, affordable, and accessible to these hospitals, which would otherwise not have the resources to purchase the foreign-made machines. Thus, with the concept of such a ventilator in mind, you harnessed the talents and efforts of your friends and colleagues at UP Engineering to develop one such machine, which became known as the Ostreavent. The rest is now history plus more. We will now listen to the continuing story of the Ostreavent as it moves into a newer version, a ventilator for adults. And this could not have come at a more timely occasion, because with COVID-19 now raging around the world, especially in underdeveloped countries like the Philippines, the need for the adult version really becomes urgent. So we will listen to how you mobilize the support of people, and especially those generous ones who wanted to see the machinery come through in production. And I understand that right now you're waiting for clinical trials, which will become the step next to actually releasing it to the public. So, and this is very important, very urgent, because we know that the virus does not discriminate, and it will afflict anyone whom it reaches, and those who do not have access to scientifically proven medical treatments are the ones who will suffer first. So that is what we're hoping to see. But I also wanted something that the Zoom session, and especially to give credit to Effie here who started it. But together with Jerry Adiarte, where are you, Jerry? We started this Zoom Bayan kind of mischievously, because we missed each other's company and interaction during the pandemic lockdown. We were all members of the organization known as UPSCA, which stands for the University of the Philippines Student Catholic Action. And it gives us great pleasure to let you know that Buddy and all the previous speakers in our group were deigned to uphold the values of Christian living, which is service and helping others. Buddy in his early college years was a member of UPSCA and was best remembered, I think, as the one who played the organ in the chapel, the UP Chapel of the Holy Sacrifice. As you probably know, he's an accomplished pianist, musician, and in addition to his academic courses in medicine, he enrolled at the UP Conservatory of Music. I only wish he could play for us as well, but maybe another time. Thank you.
So I guess with that, Buddy, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you project me here? Because I'll just make an introduction. How do you get my picture here in the screen?
Well, I can see you.
You can. Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay. First of all, good evening, everyone in the States, and good morning for those in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us in this Zoom conference. I would like to thank the organizers for sponsoring this Zoom conference and for inviting me to make this presentation on the Ostreavent. Special thanks to Lily Evangelista, Effie Hall, Rory Abrera, and Victor Vitug. The conference is 2 hours long and will consist of two parts. The first part is my presentation on the Ostreavent, starting with two brief videos on how the Ostreavent evolved and feedback from patients who benefited from it. And then a PowerPoint presentation update slides of the Ostreavent for infants and for adults, the latter propelled by the COVID-19 pandemic. The second part of the presentation will be a Q&A session. First, questions on my presentation of the Ostreavent, and then other issues of interest to the audience. For the Q&A, due to the large number of attendees, maybe it's best that you submit your questions on the chat section of the Zoom, and Effie will act as the moderator so that everything will go smoothly. So as in the Olympics, let the games begin.
Good.
There, can you hear it now?
Yes.
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 The Breath of Life and the Ostreavent, a response to the urgent needs of sick newborn infants in the Philippines. It all started 15 years ago when I made rounds in a provincial hospital in Bohol and saw this 13-year-old girl valiantly sustaining with her fragile hands the life of her intubated premature newborn sister by manually bagging her 24/7. I asked the neonatologist on rounds with me what the child was doing, and she replied, "Sir, that is our ventilator." I was shocked by what I heard and saw. So I asked, what if she falls asleep or gets tired? The neonatologist answered, then the infant dies. This episode never left my mind ever since. I also found out that this was a common practice in many hospitals in the Philippines due to the lack of ventilators. What shocked me even more was when some years later I saw in another government hospital in La Union 4 intubated infants connected by their oxygen tubing to a common bag and manually ventilated by one person. I therefore said to myself, this unsafe practice has got to stop. In 2012, the UNICEF reported that the Philippines is 8th in the world in premature birth rate. The premature infants have high mortality and morbidity due to organ underdevelopment, such as their lungs, and the lack of equipment to sustain life, such as with ventilators. About 20% of premature infants when born will require a ventilator to survive. Through the years from 1990 to 2011, The under 5 mortality rate, which is the red line, and infant mortality rate, which is the blue line, have decreased significantly. However, the neonatal mortality rate, which is the green line, has only decreased slightly. In fact, in a UNICEF report in 2014, the world has made enormous progress in improving child survival since 1990. However, to accelerate progress in child survival, focusing on the newborn is critical since the share of all under 5 deaths occurring in the neonatal period is increasing. Why the lack of ventilators? Simply because they are expensive. When I inquired from the procurement office of the Philippine General Hospital the cost of commercial ventilators in the Philippines, they ranged between 1.2 to 2.4 million pesos, a price that is beyond the reach of many government hospitals to meet their ventilator needs, particularly in the newborn nurseries. Thus, alternatives to the lack of ventilators have been resorted to. The first is rental of ventilator by the family, which is quite expensive.
Yes.
The initial cost of ventilator rental is 2,000 pesos and then 1,000 pesos for Sorry, can you hear it?
Yes.
What was the comment? Nothing. Okay. For each succeeding day. Since a premature infant can be on a ventilator for 7 to 21 days, the expense of rental is beyond the ability of the family to pay. As a consequence, the last alternative is sustained manual bagging of the infant by the watcher or bantay, the nurse, the medical resident, or the medical student. This is dangerous, since many are not trained in manual bagging of infants. Further, due to uneven pressures applied to the delicate infant lungs by bagging, this can lead to serious complications such as air leak or pneumothorax, chronic lung disease, and in many instances, death of the infant. The ventilator is a relatively simple machine in principle and can therefore be produced locally. Thus, with the help of engineers from the University of the Philippines College of Engineering and the Philippine Department of Science and Technology, we developed a ventilator for infants that we eventually called the Ostreavent. There are several advantages to the Ostreavent. First, it was extensively tested in animals using newborn piglets and compared hand in hand to a standard commercial ventilator, the Sicrist. The picture on the left is my research team doing the animal experiments, and on the right, the intubated newborn piglet being ventilated alternately with the Ostreavent or the Sicrist. Second, when the Ostreavent was found to be safe and effective in animal studies, it was subsequently tested in a randomized prospective clinical study in 90 infants at the neonatal intensive care unit of the Philippine General Hospital. Ostreavent versus the Sicrist ventilator. The conclusion was that the Ostreavent in both animal and clinical studies was as safe and effective as a standard commercial Sicrist ventilator. Third, the results of the animal and newborn infant studies on the Ostreavent were published in 2010 in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, the Acta Medica Filipina. And the study was the lead article of the journal. Fourth, there are multiple features of the Ostreavent that make it efficient and easy to operate. The Ostreavent is a pressure-limited time-cycled ventilator. It is compact and has a color screen and 2 knobs to operate, unlike in other ventilators where as many as 9 knobs are present. The knob on the right is to adjust the peak inspiratory pressure or PIP, and on the left to adjust the positive end expiratory pressure or PEP. These knobs are used to increase or decrease their corresponding pressures. The Ostreavent has a color touch screen where breaths per minute or BPM and inspiratory time or I time can be increased or decreased by pressing on the up or down buttons as indicated by the arrows. The inspiratory-expiratory or IE ratio is automatically calculated and displayed. The PIP and the PEEP for each breath and the automatically calculated mean airway pressure or MAP are displayed on the right upper hand corner of the screen. There is an alarm off button which can be used to silence the alarm but only for 30 seconds for safety reasons. The bar graph on the left of the screen shows the PIP and PEP that are generated for each breath. The upper and lower red lines are the high and low pressure alarm limits that are set for the infant. The Ostreavent also has a running waveform graph of the breaths being generated by the ventilator and shows the PIP, PEEP pressures and the inspiratory and expiratory phases of each breath. The running display of the breaths can be temporarily halted to allow each breath to be analyzed more closely. On the right upper hand corner are the actual readings of the PIP, PEEP, and the calculated MAP. On the left lower corner of the screen are the date and time that the ventilator is operational. One of the unique features of the Ostreavent, which is not found in any existing commercial ventilator, is its USB port, as shown by the red arrow. One can insert a USB stick into the USB port and record in the subsequent 1500 breaths of the ventilator data on the PIP, PEP, breaths per minute, the MAP, and the I time. The generated data is in an Excel format and can be transmitted through the internet. Thus, we can monitor the performance of the Ostreavent anywhere without being present in the nursery to determine if the ventilator is functioning properly, as will be seen in the next slide. The precision of the Ostreavent can be measured during its operation from the USB data. The table shows the performance of the Ostreavent in 860 breaths generated by the ventilator, with a PIP set at 20 and PEP set at 5 on the ventilator. The table shows the performance of the Ostreavent in 860 breaths generated by the ventilator, with a PIP set at 20 and PEP set at 5 on the ventilator. The table shows 160 breaths is 19.51 with a standard deviation of 0.91 and a mean PEEP of 4.37 with a standard deviation of 0.23. How much more precision can you expect from a ventilator than this? The Ostreavent has also been issued a patent by the Philippine government to prevent unlawful and dangerous copying of the ventilator. One of the most important features of the Ostreavent is its low cost of 300,000 pesos as compared to 1.2 million pesos cost of a similar pressure-limited time-cycled commercial ventilator. Thus, the Ostreavent is one-fourth the cost of a similar commercial ventilator. Essentially, one can buy 4 Ostreavents for the price of one equivalent commercial ventilator. In 2012, the Breath of Life Foundation Incorporated was officially approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission of the Philippines. The foundation was established for the production, sale, and distribution of the Ostreavent. The Breath of Life Foundation is a non-profit, non-stock organization whose mission is to provide a low-cost, safe, and efficient ventilator and medical support for the sick newborn infants. Its vision is to decrease neonatal and infant mortality and morbidity in the Philippines and to help the Philippines attain its Millennium Goals by providing low-cost ventilators and medical needs of newborn infants, especially the sick premature infants. In the United States, the Breath of Life Foundation was granted by the Internal Revenue Service a 501(c)(3) status in January 2015, which makes donations to the foundation as tax deductible. In the Philippines, before a similar tax deductible status can be issued. In January 2015, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, came to the Philippines particularly to visit his flock who were the victims of devastation from Typhoon Yolanda. Millions of people in Palo, Leyte, shown in the upper right-hand corner, attended our Holy Father's Mass amidst the wind, rain, and mud to hear his message of mercy and compassion. Similarly, a papal mass was held in Luneta, Manila, shown in the right lower corner, where millions of people attended, again amidst the wind, rain, and mud. I attended the papal mass despite all these adversities and the weather because I was a witness to our Holy Father's call for mercy and compassion for the little ones. I wanted our Holy Father to bless us in our undertaking. So, during the final papal blessing, his benediction, I held high the logo of the Breath of Life Foundation for our Holy Father to bless us in our mission. I included in the logo his admonition, "Dear young people, do not bury your talents, the gifts that God has given you. Do not be afraid to dream of great things." This presentation ends with the beginning when I first witnessed this little girl valiantly using her fragile hands to manually sustain the life of her newborn sister. Problem of manual bagging of infants may seem insurmountable, but with compassion and determination it can be slowly overcome. Better it is to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Thank you.
It is better to light just one little candle than to stumble in the dark. Better far to light just
Just
one
one little candle underneath the starlight.
Okay, now we go to the second presentation.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Did you hear everything?
Yes, sir.
Very clearly. Okay, I'm glad.
Loud and clear.
Very good.
Galing,
Okay,
buddy. Galing. Very poetic.
thank you. Okay, here's the second one. This is really an update and a video of the those who benefited from the ventilator. And this was a video taken in Fabella Hospital, which is the largest obstetric hospital in the Philippines, delivering a lot of indigent patients. So you will see here in this picture very crowded conditions, which are not really ideal in the nursery, but cannot be helped because of the number of patients they have. So this is the second presentation. This is short. This is seven minutes only.
To the World Health Organization, 1 in 10 babies are born premature, of which over 1 million babies
We're not seeing it, buddy.
about 20% of the cases.
Oh, hold on a
their
second.
lungs are so
Hold on. Yeah, I'm glad you're commenting on these things because I cannot really see what I'm doing here.
So you have to share audio.
Yes, I am sharing it now.
All right.
developed
Can you
that
hear
they
it?
have to
Yes.
rely on artificial.
Can you
Yes.
hear it now? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Can you see it?
Yes.
yes, loud and
Okay.
clear, Doc.
Good. Now let us go and
According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 10 babies are born premature, of which over 1 million babies will die. In about 20% of the cases, their lungs are so underdeveloped that they have to rely on artificial breathing support to survive. A special equipment called ventilator serves as the baby's mechanical lungs until the baby can eventually breathe for himself. Unfortunately, ventilators are not available in sufficient number in many hospitals of poor and developing countries because ventilators are expensive. The only alternative is continuous handbagging of the baby to help it breathe, and not infrequently, this is done by an untrained family member. Handbagging of the infant's delicate lungs can lead to complications that will manifest in the baby's later years if the baby survives. In response to this sad situation, we have developed the Ostreavent, an equally safe and effective ventilator as the imported ventilator at 1/4 the cost. The Ostreavent has been distributed free to many government hospitals in the Philippines and has been reaping a lot of satisfaction and success stories.
Pinanganak ko siya ng 32 to 33 weeks lang. Bali, first baby ko yung triplets na yon. Kaya siya naka-ventilator din kasi nga, hindi pa ganun ka-develop yung baga niya. Una pa lang po, sinabi na po talaga sa amin na wala pong incubator. Siyempre po, hindi po namin alam kung mabubuhay silang tatlo, kaya nakakatakot po. Isang buwan na kami mahigit dito, pero nandyan pa rin siya, lumalaban. Gamit din po yung makina na nga yan. Thankful pa rin ako kasi may ganyan pong makina para mabuhay yung baby ko. Siyempre, hindi lang po yung anak ko yung nangangailangan yan. Marami pa po talaga. Kaya, ayun, thank you po kasi may Pilipino na gumagawa niyan para sa mga batang nangangailangan.
We want to continue the distribution of the Ostreavent to hospitals where they are most needed. But we need your help. We can equip hospitals with ventilators to meet their needs. You can give the poor, sick infant a chance in life by contributing to our cause. Please help by clicking on the link below.
okay. That's the second presentation.
Yep.
Now
Thank you,
I
Doc.
will I will go to the PowerPoint now. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Full
I
screen
can
now.
see it.
Okay, now you will be hearing my beautiful voice.
Okay.
This is the PowerPoint presentation. And the purpose of this is really to update you, give you the evolution of the Ostreavent. That is the mechanical evolution of the Ostreavent. And then going from the Ostreavent for infants to the Ostreavent for adults. As I said, because there was a great need for ventilators, I had to ask the engineer to help me in the development of this machine. And I was fortunate enough to meet Professor Maning Hernandez from the UP College of Engineering, Department of Mechanical Engineering. I got him because he devised an equipment for the laboratory of my brother just from the garage. And so I felt that was the right person to approach for the ventilator, which was really a simple machine. And he created this machine. What he did was buy these parts from Raon. This is really a part of a radio.
The radio.
And devised the ventilator where the PIP and the PEP could be regulated. And there was a dial here that would tell you the pressures that were generated by the ventilator. Just to show you the ingenuity of this person, a ventilator has to have an alarm system, so that if it's the alarm, the pressure goes very high, it will alarm, and it will also serve as a relief valve to remove the excess pressure. And this is what he devised. Look at this. This is the relief valve and alarm. If the pressure goes up, he has a sort of a metal here that has a certain weight that will rise as the pressure is increased. And when it is very high, that metal will hit another endpoint here and close the circuit, and so the alarm will sound. I thought that was a very, very ingenious way of producing an alarm, just by the weight of a metal. Then from this, this is the picture of the interior of that device that was, of course, made in the garage. No, and this is the first Ostreavent ventilator that we had. Then Professor Alex Paran, who is in the audience, developed this ventilator, trying to improve it, and it looked like a rectangular device here, but I thought it was too big. And look at the knobs, only two here. But it served the purpose of ventilating this infant, you know. But then I was not convinced that a dial was a right way of measuring pressure, because one just has to look at the dial and guess where the needle was going to determine the pressure. I wanted something that actually was electronic, a screen display of the pressure. And so, okay, where I was, okay. As I said, the previous ventilators were actually a dial that you could detect the pressure by the reading on the dial. But I thought that was inaccurate because you're guessing. And so I wanted a digital readout of the ventilator. And so we did this, tried to do this touch screen here. It took close to 3 to 4 years to develop this, to the point of my exasperation. When are we going to have this touch screen, this digitally, electronically created screen? So I said, is there anybody at the DOST that can help me? So they said, yeah, there's a professor, Robert Deason there, who's the assistant secretary of the DOST, and he's knowledgeable in this thing. So I went to see him, and I told him, Professor Deason, I want the readout of an equipment to be on a screen, not a dial, mechanical dial. I want it on the screen, and I want it to be modular. So if there's any problem with it, they don't have to tinker around determining what was wrong, but actually just replace the module. And Professor Deason said the words that Professor Hernandez told me when I said, how can I have this ventilator? He said, madalian. So typical of UP bred professors, Professor Deason said, madalian. So nabuhayan ako when I heard that. He said, you know, those things are already available. You can buy them from Taiwan, etc. And you can have these modules available. And so this is what we did. We ordered this from Taiwan, and lo and behold, we have now a touch screen ventilator and readouts on the screen. And this was made by, this model was made by Professor Paul Rogers, and it was a box-like ventilator. And I asked him to color it green, parang UP. And you notice now yung mga knobs meron ng label, PEP and PIP. And so from that garage-made ventilator by Professor Manning, we evolved into this thing until we finally got into the last one. But this is how simple the ventilator really is. You know, you can copy it, I'm sure. I won't mind, because even if it's patented, because I want it to be used. You know, okay. This is the whole ventilator itself, this one here. And it's very simple, because the oxygen will go to the patient, infant here, and then go into the ventilator. And then we'll exit through two two valves, the PEP valve and the PIP valve. And the thing that controls the exit of the oxygen either through this valve or this valve is a solenoid valve that opens and closes. It's as simple as that. If it's closed, then the oxygen will go to the PIP valve, and this has a certain resistance. So that resistance and oxygen now will go to the baby. If it is open, it goes out to the PEP throttling valve. Very simple. And there's a relief valve here that has an alarm, and of course the microcontroller that will control the operation of the ventilator. Also, this is the ventilator that is placed after the baby, not before the baby. And this is the final product. After having all the mechanics in, the electronics and everything, I said, it has to look nice because we have to be able to compete. And so I went to the department, to the UP College of Fine Arts. They have a sort of a department there for equipment, to help people. And Professor Silvestre designed this ventilator, and you notice it's so beautiful and it's very simple. And this is the ventilator currently that we now use for premature infants in various hospitals in the Philippines. This ventilator was so impressive that the Department of Trade and Industry of the Philippines awarded it as one of the most innovative inventions of 2015 and asked us to display our ventilator in the National Summit on Startups and Innovation in April of 2016. Thereafter, we started producing the ventilator and donating it to various hospitals. These are some of the donors here, my friends, of course, from the United States, donating it to Fabella Hospital. And this is how the baby looked with the ventilator. Notice the massive ventilators at the other ends, see? And this little ventilator here that could actually perform just as well as these two ventilators ventilating this infant. Okay. Since the Fabella Hospital has so many indigent patients, mothers and infants, then we have donated 5 ventilators already to this hospital. And believe it or not, since we donated the ventilators to them in 2015, it has been non-stop in its use. Hindi pa natatapos isang baby kasi magaling-galing na, there's already another baby waiting. Non-stop yan, and it has performed well. The Ostreavent is a workhorse provided that it has maintenance. And if there's any problem, it's troubleshooting, but it's a very simple ventilator. Here we donated the ventilator to the MCU hospital in the Locos Regional Training Medical Center. By the way, this doctora here, I trained her in Michigan, and she is a neonatologist in this hospital. We have given them 3 ventilators. And also it is in this hospital where I saw those 4 infants who are intubated, simultaneously bagged using 1 line and 1 bag by 1 person. That is the one that told me, that broke the camel's back, because I said, this has to stop. Here we donated it to Quirino Memorial Hospital. It's a little bit better now because now it has a heater humidifier in it, and we didn't rely on the hospital to provide their own because they were using very old equipment, and the water was actually filled with moss or whatever was growing in it. So I said, let's stop that too. This is the ventilator we gave at the Hospital ng Maynila. I'm showing this because whenever we donate a ventilator, we ask the donor to be present during the turnover. Now, of course, that cannot be done because of the COVID, and we're still giving ventilators out. But this is at the time when there was no COVID, and we had Mrs. Serena here, Engineer Serena, whose husband is an engineer, who happened to be...
Mencho Serena.
Yes, Serena. And we asked her to pose near the ventilator that was already being used on an infant. I don't know why I did not show, why I don't have the slide on our first donation to PGH. Anyhow, here's Fabella again, another ventilator given by my friends in Michigan, because they really need it. They have a lot of babies that need ventilators. This is an incomplete list of hospitals where we gave donated ventilators. Donation was either through donors, no, the 300 to 350,000 peso per ventilator, or it was fundraising by the Breath of Life Foundation. So there were two sources of funds to donate the ventilator. At this point here, there were only 60 ventilators being distributed, but now we have 75 of them being given from Tuguegarao in Cagayan down to Zamboanga del Sur and in Dipolog. So you notice it's all over the Philippines now. Okay, that's the story of the Ostreavent for infants. Then we had the COVID crisis that occurred in last year. And here's a sad picture of this father and his child. Very cute. I like this picture because the child also has a mask, you know, in the Philippines. And this is the COVID virus with its whatever that thing is that it's there's protrusions it has.
That's the spike.
That's the spike
Spikes.
protein.
Yeah, the
Oh.
spike protein that is being generated when you have the Moderna, that's being generated by the host cell when you're given Moderna or Pfizer vaccine. Okay, these were the events that occurred during that time. March, April, and May 2020 was the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic, which included the Philippines. And the Philippine General Hospital was designated as a referral COVID-19 center in the Philippines. Since the pandemic was raging and there was lack of ventilators, even prior to the COVID, there was already a significant lack of ventilators in the Philippines. So on March 23, while I was still in Manila, Dr. Charlotte Cheong, who is the Dean of the UP College of Medicine, called me up, informed me of the impending COVID-19 crisis in the Philippines and the anticipated urgent need of medical supplies and ventilators. And Dean Cheong asked me if the Ostreavent for infants could be used for adult patients. And of course, I told her, Dean, this ventilator is only used for infants and children up to the age of 5. It is not for adults. But she said you have to convert it into an adult ventilator, and a ventilator for adult use. And so I had my marching orders. And in March 28, when I returned to the Philippines, I convened a group of 6 medical and 2 engineering experts, all from UP, to fast track, using the original Ostreavent model here, the creation of a ventilator for adults, which eventually was the Ostreavent II. Here are the members of the team, the eight conscientious and hardworking and talented group. We have here the engineers. This is Professor Robert Deason. We don't have the picture of Alex Paran, but he's among the listeners, so maybe we'll see his picture. Then the 2 neonatologists, Dr. Sterlita Uy, and then myself, 2 intensivists, pediatric intensivists. This is the husband of Dr. Uy, Dr. Herbie Uy, and Dr. Vince Faustino from Yale University. I recruited him for the group. And then, of course, the adult pulmonologist, Professor Dr. George Jorge, who used to be the chief of medicine at the PGH and UP College of Medicine, and an adult pulmonologist, and Dr. Kristan, a pulmonologist at the intensive care unit of PGH. This is Dr. Tan here, and this is the team of Professor Robert Deason making the Austrian ventilator. This is the Austria ventilator here. number 1 for infants, and that is the Ostrea ventilator number 2 for adults. It still looks ugly because we have not had the College of Fine Arts do their work on it. Now, this is the Ostreavent II, or for adults. Yeah, it is a little bit bigger because it has more parts into it, and it is both a volume ventilator and a pressure cycle ventilator. So it will do both. It has graphs that will tell you the volume, the flow rate, the PIP, everything can be seen in this screens. So it is really, it compares very well with any commercial ventilator available, except for the fact that it does not have an assist control, and we're working on that now. So once we had the prototype, and I'd like to tell you that due to the hard work of this core group, they were able to produce from the prototype Ostreavent for infants, the Ostreavent for adults in a short period of 2 months, from March, April, May, until May and the end of June. And we were ready to have it used, but then the Philippine government required that the ventilator, since it's Philippine-made, should be certified by an agency that they designated. I found this to be unusual because in the Philippines, they do not require ventilators that are obtained from abroad for certification. They accept their certification in their respective countries, and yet in the Philippines, they will require this from us. Anyway, we did that. Have them certify the Ostreavent II, but unfortunately, it took them 10 months to be able to certify the ventilator. How many lives have been lost because of that? 10 months, unbelievable. Anyhow, we received from the FDA the Certificate of Medical Device Listing, which means that we can now test the ventilators clinically so as to see if it will work, is safe and effective in patients. Because I will not allow a ventilator to go from the garage to patient without undergoing all of these processes which are needed, of course, to prove that it is not only effective but also safe. So we're at that stage right now where we are testing the ventilator on patients. All we need is really 10 patients to test this and to have it approved as safe and effective in patients. Unfortunately, we could not proceed further because we have been interrupted many times due to the COVID crisis. Whenever there's a COVID epidemic, again, resurgence of it, then so many patients are admitted to PGH, which was the area where we were doing the clinical test. And they had to put the clinical test aside in the back burner because the priority was for the influx of so many COVID patients to PGH. So that's where we stand now. Once we get the clinical testing of the ventilator completed, then we will now go into the production of it. I have already solicited money to test 10 ventilators, not only in PGH, but throughout the distributed in Metro Manila. Of course, its ventilator will cost $10,000, and I was able to obtain money from one donor who gave $50,000, and then from the generosity of UP College of Medicine Class 66, they were able to raise $50,000. So now we have money for 10 ventilators that will soon be produced for the clinic, for the field testing of the ventilator. So I will end this presentation by showing you the initial ventilator that made me go forward. This Ostreavent is Philippine-made ventilator that gives the sick newborn infant a chance in life. For those of you who are interested in donating, this is a gift that keeps on giving. In other words, not only good for one patient, but for more and more and more, and more lives are saved. I'd like to end with this picture that a neonatologist in a hospital sent to me when I gave her a ventilator. This is the Ostreavent being used on an infant here on the bed, not even on an incubator because it was so poor. But then, instead of being manually bagged, the baby was being ventilated by the Ostreavent, and here was the father watching his, his child, his infant being ventilated. This is the caption I placed in it. Somewhere in a distant, poor hospital in the province, a sick infant lies on a bed without an incubator and only a lump, this is the lump here, to give it heat. An anxious and grateful father watches an Ostreavent help his sick newborn infant to breathe. No more endless ambubagging for the infant to survive. Now, for those of you who want to donate, here is the way to do it. This is a pretty long list, and I will give you, I'll send you this information if you call me, and that will be seen in the last slide. For the Philippines, a donation of 350,000, which is a little bit more because of the price of the parts increasing, to provide an Ostreavent for infants, and 500,000 pesos to provide an Ostreavent for adults. You make this check payable to the Breath of Life Foundation and sent to me in my house in the Philippines, or you can make a direct deposit to the Bank of the Philippine Islands on the account of the Breath of Life Foundation. In the United States, the donation you can give is $7,500 to provide an Ostreavent for infants in the Philippines, or $10,000 to provide an Ostreavent for adults. Again, make the check payable to the Breath of Life Foundation, mailed to my address in the United States, Michigan, and this is my email. All donations in the United States are tax deductible fully because the Breath of Life Foundation is a designated charitable organization that has a 501c3 tax-exempt status. And also, this is the bonus we give. Any donation is appreciated, but as a full ventilator donor, your name in honor of your loved ones will be inscribed on the donated ventilator. This is information. I will let this slide stay a little longer so you can copy my email address here or call me because I use my cell phone in the United States when I travel to the Philippines. You can call me by Viber, FaceTime, or Messenger if you want information and if you're interested in the donation. Thank you so much for listening, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Buddy. That
Welcome.
is excellent.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, buddy.
Nabuhay ka, Doc.
Congratulations, buddy. Very nice.
Thank you.
Very informative.
We have some people who have been asking questions about donations,
Olympia Junior.
but you already provided that information. So now the new thing that we know is that the pediatric one is about 7,500 pesos.
Dollars.
I mean dollars, and the adult one is $10,000.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
More
Right.
parts on the adult. That's why it's a little bit more expensive.
Yep.
So, Buddy, where are the ventilators being made? Do you have a production crew that makes the ventilators?
Yes. And I'm ashamed to say it is only in the house because we don't have this in full blast yet.
But we also have some
Eventually.
people who are asking if this presentation is going to be made available on YouTube.
The two videos are available on YouTube.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how can they?
How can they get access to that?
I think
Is
they
it
just
through
they
is it
just
through the foundation site?
No, YouTube. You use YouTube. It is in YouTube, and then you ask for Ostreavent, and then it will come out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because
we'll
we
let
have
them know.
been soliciting donations through YouTube also, and that
Okay.
Yeah,
was
because some people were not able to attend, you know, the presentation. They're interested to watch it.
Well, what we hope, it had been recorded, and so uh, the host for this Zoom is Rory Campbell, and she normally then makes it available, makes the video available. And at that point, we can tell Buddy, who can then tell you all how to access the video of this presentation.
it's very
Does that?
easy. You just go to
And
YouTube and it's there.
here you can also see.
But
Uh,
the
I,
but the but the PowerPoint presentation is not on YouTube.
so I know, I think they were asking about this whole thing, this whole
Share on chat the link to the
your,
YouTube.
your entire presentation. Hopefully, we can make it available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we need the link.
Mhm. Yes, we will provide. We'll have the link through Rory, and we'll let Buddy know, and through Buddy, he can let you all know.
Okay,
Would that work?
sounds good. Thank you.
I'm going to then check to see if there are any questions.
Question,
Can you ask about
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, Johnny.
plans to have it used anywhere?
I'd like to say that my eldest granddaughter was 7 months when she was born. So she was 2 months premature. But we were fortunate to have a hospital nearby, which is rated among the top in the country. It is St. Peter's University Hospital. Are you planning to, I have two questions. Are you planning to expand to the US in terms of commercial sales eventually?
The commercialization, there are two arms to the Ostreavent Foundation, the Birth of Life Foundation. The first arm definitely is the charitable arm, and this was what the SEC gave us authority to use to establish the foundation, and so that is our first objective. And the objective is really to provide ventilators first in the Philippines, because that is where it is needed. No, now going to other countries is, of course, something in the future that we will do. We have been discussing this, including the commercialization of the Ostreavent, because we will eventually run out of donors, and it is only to support the commercialization and interest among companies to produce this and sell it, that it will still be available. In terms of the United States, they will be last on my list for the ventilators, because the United States is a very affluent country, and they can afford all of these expensive ventilators. Look at the pandemic.
But you'll be surprised that during the pandemic, there was a shortage of ventilators.
Yeah, but in a short time, when President Trump mobilized the Ford company, I think, or GM or whatever, they were able to produce more than enough, in fact.
Unfortunately, President
ventilators.
Trump is no longer in power.
Yes. But anyhow, commercialization of the ventilator is definitely one of our objectives also, because as I said, we will eventually run out of donors, and it's best to have this on a commercial level, and that discussion has been ongoing.
So maybe you should apply for a patent in the United States.
Probably, yeah. But I am not so enthused about it because, I also had a patent on my meconium drug test, and people have infringed on it if it's good. If it's a good test, they infringe on it. They changed like the meconium drug test. It was testing the newborn infant's stool to test for drugs, and it was so successful. It's now used in the United States throughout. that now people who were interested in it just changed the pH and got their own patent, just changed the dissolution, got their own patent. So I said, I'm not going to fight them. I want people to use the knowledge, really. And that is what has happened with the meconium drug test. It is used extensively in the United States with a lot of infringements on the patent. But I said, forget it. I'm not going to run after all of those.
The second question I have, you'll have to pardon my ignorance, I'm just a layman. Is there any connection between the ventilators and what we call ventilador in the Philippines?
Ventilator is used for cooling you during the hot weather. No, when we say ventilator in the medical context, it means a machine that helps a patient breathe. No, either because they're either exhausted or the lungs are so stiff that it needs a lot of work to ventilate or to exchange gas, oxygen, and CO2. And that's the time they're placed on the ventilator. And that is seen in COVID patients. Eventually,
The same as respirator?
yes, exactly. That is what it is. It is a respirator. What we use the term ventilator.
So, how it works? It's connected to an oxygen tank.
Yeah, you have to have an oxygen source, not pure oxygen, but you have to have oxygen and compressed air mixture so that you will blend it to the right concentration that the patient will need.
So, is that blended through the Ostreavent?
No, it's outside. When you go to the wall, there
Uh-huh.
is a blender there that you connect to the Ostreavent, and that gives the oxygen mixture first to the patient and then to the ventilator.
So, what does the Ostreavent do then if the oxygen is, so this is not scientific. I mean, I'm not I'm not a medical doctor. So if the oxygen is mixed outside and then it's through a tube fed into the infant, then it's exhaled into the Ostreavent. So where does the Ostreavent come in the
Okay,
process?
I hope I still have the slide here. I don't know if I have. No. Can you still see this?
No, you'll have to share.
Can you still see this?
Yes, now we can
Okay.
see.
You see this one?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
The oxygen air mixture comes from the wall or the blender, and then goes to a heater humidifier, and it goes to the patient. And then also exits towards. Now this is a little bit unique because this is the Ostreavent operates a little bit uniquely compared to other ventilators, but they essentially doing the same thing. They breathe for the infant the oxygen air mixture. But in the Ostreavent, okay, now this is the oxygen air mixture infant and also going out into the Ostreavent. Okay? Then this oxygen will now flow and exit through two valves, the PEEP valve and the PIP valve. And the equipment or the equipment that will control where this oxygen should go is the solenoid valve. This is a valve that opens and closes, and that's equivalent to the breaths per minute of the ventilator. If it is open, okay, here are the exit valves. This is a high resistance. That's why it has a higher pressure compared to this, which is a lower pressure. If this is closed, then the oxygen can only exit through the PIP, at a certain pressure. That's how you regulate the PIP or the pressure given to the infant. And since the infant is still connected to this system, that pressure here is reflected back into the infant. You see it? That's equivalent to the breath. When this solenoid valve opens, then this is high resistance, so then now the oxygen will go out of the PEP valve to exhaust. That is how the breath is given.
You eating?
So, Effie, now I understand. I had the same question as you. At first, I said, what does the Ostreavent do when the oxygen goes directly to the infant? From Dr. Body's explanation, I'm going to paraphrase it, and if you could correct me, Dr. Body, if I'm wrong. Basically, the Ostreavent is the one that controls the breaths per minute that is given to the baby. So you can control, if you want 50 breaths per minute, you set it to 50, and that's the frequency of the oxygen that is given to the baby.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is done by the solenoid valve opening and closing.
Yeah, so that's where the vent comes in.
Okay. And again, how does the baby get its breath? Well, when the solenoid valve closes, then the oxygen will have to exit here, right? But this is a high resistance. You can regulate this by the amount of resistance by which that's offered to the flow before it gets out. And that is where you regulate the positive inspiratory pressure, or PIP. Because let's just assume you set this so that it will deliver a pressure of 20. Well, when the valve closes, then that 20 pressure is also experienced by the infant because it is connected to this whole system. That's why it's very simple. There are no moving parts, no piston that drives in and out. And
So
and this is the reason why it's a workhorse. It has very low, no moving parts, and so very little part to fix or to get broken. Yes.
the baby takes a breath and exhales. So when the baby exhales, what the baby has.
No, the baby actually, after being placed on a ventilator, eventually synchronizes with the ventilator.
I see.
It does not take its breath and fight this. If it fights it, then the baby is sedated. So the breathing of the baby is done by the ventilator.
I see.
See? Every time this closes, that's a breath for the baby, because this is the direction by which the oxygen will be reflected both in the exit valve and in the infant. That's how it gets it.
So is this principle the same for the adult Ostreavent too?
Pretty much so, but more complicated, because I don't want to go into that, but it is still the same mechanism. Still using a solenoid valve.
I see. So if
no moving parts.
So who determines how many breaths per minute? I guess that's the medical question now. How much does the baby need? How do you determine? How do you control the breaths per minute that you want to give to the baby? Or
well, you dial it using this on the solenoid valve. You can make the solenoid valve open and close 50 times a minute, and that's the breath for the baby.
I understand that part, but I guess my question is the medical reason for giving more oxygen or giving less oxygen.
That's a medical decision. The doctor, of course, the doctor. Either the pulmonologist or the neonatologist. They will determine based on the response of the baby, the saturation of the oxygen saturation, the blood gases. They will determine what the settings are and what changes need to be made.
Okay.
So there is interest in the adult ventilator, and of course, I understand it still has to go through clinical trials. It looks like something like this has to be operated in the hospital. It's not something you can have at home.
Oh no. No. There are equipment for home use, but this is all used. But you can use this. There have been instances where the ventilator is used at home in chronic patients, but then they have to be trained to do that. But those are the exception. I'm not saying you cannot use a ventilator at home. You can, but they need a lot of training, And usually those are the patients that do not need a lot of attention. You know, it's just making them breathe because it's too expensive for them to stay in the hospital months after months after months. And so if they're hooked onto the ventilator, maybe they can go home on the ventilator, and that has been done. That has been done.
May I batin? This is Nell. From the diagram presented, the oxygen therefore does not go directly from the heater humidifier to the baby, but rather from the exhaust to the baby. That's why I'm quite confused by the diagram.
No, it also passes.
Did you the process itself, from how you describe it, the air mixture goes into the baby after the exhaust, not directly from the heater humidifier, as shown in the diagram.
Well, the baby is part of this whole system here.
But
this whole
arrow,
system. This
the
whole
arrow,
system, yeah.
The arrow coming from the humidifier, a heater humidifier, should not be there, but from the exhaust to the baby. From the process you described.
No, not from the exhaust. The exhaust is already a low pressure. Okay. Again, this valve here, let's say you set this resistance here, so it will deliver a pressure of 20 centimeters water. Okay. That is if the oxygen here will exit to this, it will have to exit to a resistance that will deliver a pressure here of 20. Now, since the baby is attached to the ventilator, no, and the baby is a passive passenger, then whatever pressure is generated here, it's like a backflow, and that is the pressure given to the baby. He's a part of the system.
But the arrow that comes direct from the humidifier heater, so the arrow to the baby should come somewhere, maybe not from the exhaust, but from the other line, like the maybe coming from the PIP.
You cannot put it out here. The pressure here is very low. This is the exit.
Side, there is another. There is a missing. There's a missing line that goes to the baby, but it should not be direct from the heater humidifier.
Well, this is the way the oxygen flows.
From the flow chart, based on the flow chart. Maybe
remember, this is a closed system, including the baby. Okay.
Yeah.
This
But
is a closed system.
Going to the baby should not come direct from the process you describe. The flow chart seems to be need to be. The arrow going to the baby should not be directly coming from the heater humidifier, but maybe from the box coming out of the ventilator.
It's like a backflow. It's like a backflow. Okay. Any other question?
Can I interrupt on that?
Yes. Why don't you introduce yourself, because I don't know who's talking.
Oh yeah. This is Victor.
Victor.
It's Vic. Vitug.
Okay, Vic.
Vic.
Yeah. You've got actually the gas flow. The gas mixture is think of it as a constant, so to speak. Okay. And at the start of the inhalation, the solenoid valve is closed. And also the PIP throttle valve is resistant. It is closed, but it will only open up to at a certain point. Okay. Yeah. So what happens here is that the pressure, the gas mixture will actually go into the baby's lungs and expand it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, when the solenoid valve releases, the pressure will go lower because it's open now and the gas will be flowing out, and that
Yes.
will be the exhalation phase.
Yes. Yes.
So the oxygen mixture goes direct from the heater humidifier to the baby, and when it on the inhalation portion, and on the exhalation portion, it goes out and gets sucked out through the solenoid valve.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want, okay, if you want, remove the baby here and put a balloon here. Okay, attach the balloon here, so it's a closed system. You will note this balloon will open and will expand and deflate.
Yes. Yes.
That's exactly the principle there. The
Pretty
baby is
much
like the
like
balloon.
Yeah, pretty much like the CPAP machine, the constant pressure.
Yes. Well, yes, the CPAP is along the same principle. You know,
Yeah, same principle.
you apply a pressure and that will be delivered to the infant, except that in this CPAP, it's a constant pressure that the patient is breathing against, and that's how to keep the lungs slightly open. Because on exhalation, you don't want the lungs to collapse, because it will be very hard for the lungs to reopen if it is completely collapsed. And that is the disease of the baby who has hyaline membrane disease. Because of the lack of surfactant, the lungs collapse, and the baby has a hard time reopening it. And so they get tired and they die. So if you want, you just replace this with a balloon and you'll see that it will open, inflate and deflate based on the cycling of the solenoid.
So
Yeah, okay.
essentially, it breathes for the baby.
Yes, it breathes it possibly. It's not an active. It's not like the ventilator which you have now that you are familiar with. It generates a breath for the baby, a pressure, and delivers that to the baby. To do that, it has to have a piston, right? That will drive that oxygen to the baby's lungs. And that's where you get a lot of the trauma, the barotrauma, and that is one of the reasons for the lung diseases that occur with ventilators. The trauma of the ventilator pushing in oxygen into the lungs. This machine is essentially a very passive system, and of course it delivers a pressure. There's no doubt about it. But if you prolong this indefinitely, you'll have barotrauma.
Okay.
That's why I said it's a very simple machine. It's just reliable on a valve opening and closing in order to give the breath to the baby. And we have done it already, used this already on so many babies now in different nurseries, and it works.
There's a question here in the chat from Georgie Encanto. I have seen several adult patients attached to one ventilator because of the shortage of ventilators in the hospital. Is this okay?
No,
How can you
definitely
do?
not. You're assuming that the lungs of the two patients have the same dynamics, problem, resistance. No, you cannot do that. That's why those 4 babies being ventilated by one bag, that's impossible. I mean, the baby with the best lungs will get the most oxygen. The baby with the worst lung will not get anything. That's just the dynamics of gas exchange, pressure volume curves. No, please do not put two
Cannot
patients
be.
unless it is desperation. You know, the problem there is you do that and you do it because you think that's the only way you can do it. Then maybe you have to secure a waiver that you're doing this, because if the patient dies, nobody's going to defend you for that. Now, the Ostreavent, as I said, now the one for adults, I know that it can be used for the adults patients now with COVID, but I don't want to do that, because if a patient dies, you don't know if he died from the COVID or from the ventilator or both. That will be on our conscience forever. You do not do that. You have to do a clinical test first before you try it on patients. The patients cannot be a guinea pig. Now, if it's really, there's nothing more except to back breathe this baby, you can use the ventilator on a compassionate basis. But then they have to sign a waiver that they're doing this with the knowledge that it is not yet fully tested, which is exactly what happened to your Sinovacs. They were not yet fully tested on a large number of people. They just use the people who receive it as their test subjects. That's not correct, really, scientifically. But because it was needed, then it was being used. Same thing with the Moderna and the Pfizer. They did not undergo the third phase of testing because of the epidemic. The people were dying.
Obviously, from a clinical perspective,
What was that?
Who's speaking, please?
I think this was a radio or something.
Oh, I thought there was
You
somebody.
have to shut off your TV and your radio because that will be transmitted.
I thought that maybe there was somebody making a comment about politics.
Politics? Did I say anything?
No, 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 no.
I have to be, what do you call that? Be careful of what I say now. I already said enough with the government certification, but that's because they delayed it 10 months. Just imagine to certify an equipment.
Somebody said that SOP, standard operating procedure, in the chat. Somebody made a comment that standard operating procedure.
But
But
not 10
anyway,
months.
yeah.
Not 10 months. They should have done that in 2-3 months. And secondly, why only Philippine-made ventilators? Why don't they test incoming ventilators from different countries? Why do they want to accept their test, their certification, hook, line, and sinker? That is what I object to. Why is there a bias?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I might get crucified because I'm saying this.
Are there any more questions?
oh, I have a comment. Hello?
Yes. Who is it?
Yes, I have a comment for Dr. Buddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Buddy, actually, Ninong Buddy, it's your nephew, Joseph.
Who is this?
This is Joseph.
Joseph.
Ninobla.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I will update the website tonight with all the information that you provided. So.
Yes, Joseph has been very, very helpful in creating the website for the Ostreavent when we were doing the solicitation of the Ostreavent II. Very, very helpful in that regard. And I thank you, Joseph, for all your work. He put everything into the YouTube, I think, isn't it?
No, your website.
On my website. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a website. Maybe you can share that.
Yeah, I did. I shared it on the chat. It is the short version is www.ostreavent.org.
Yeah.
And that will have the YouTube video of what everyone had watched earlier. And it also has a written history of the Ostreavent. I will update the new information that Uncle Buddy had shared on the website on where to donate. So
yeah, that was a very beautiful work you did. And it was, of course, solicitation of donation.
So let me just clarify. Ostreavent.org has the 2 videos as well as the PowerPoint presentation?
No,
not the PowerPoint.
Just the 2 videos?
Yes, and some other information. So most of the presentation that Uncle Buddy provided, it's pretty much in written form, minus the slideshow presentation. So if you go through the website, you will see the history, the initial history of the Ostreavent. So
I was just this is Just, I was wondering why the clinical testing of the adult Ostreavent cannot proceed because the subjects are right there. I
No,
mean, there is an increase. No?
no, we cannot include COVID patients because, first of all, these are very, very sick patients. And you don't want to use very sick patients for a clinical test because they may die from the disease, not from the ventilator, and we don't want that.
I see, I see.
So,
They're not the right subject, in other words.
yeah, yeah, we can use COVID patients if worse comes to worse, but they have to be already almost at the stage where they will be taken off the ventilator.
So,
The-
what kind of patients, what kind of subjects do you want for your test?
A
For
lot
your
of them would probably come from the surgical unit, those who post surgical and they're on ventilators, and we can, the test is only for 6 hours,
I see.
so
Okay.
it's very quick.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we cannot do it at PGH now, which is where I want it to be done because the people are trained there, because those people we trained are helping patients because
COVID
there's so many
patients.
of them.
Right.
They have no time for research at this point, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Oh.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Sayang nga we got caught kung hindi lamang itong 10 months na certification, it could have been done pre-COVID. Ngayon, another COVID, Delta naman. Patience is a virtue.
I'm just going through it. Nell, are there any more questions, Cherry or Beth?
Buddy, it's Beth Arceliana.
Yeah, Beth. Oh, how are you?
Hi. Okay, haven't seen you since
Ages ago.
maybe 25 years ago.
Are you retired now?
Yeah, I'm retired from UP since 2011, but I'm still in private practice, so I'm busier than ever actually. I do a little bit of work with BOH for the blood program, blood safety, and HIV. Listen, I was thinking, at the risk of being too simplistic, when Effie asks, what is it for? I mean, since you can go directly from oxygen to baby, what your Ostreavent actually does, I think the it would be helpful if you were to, I think, emphasize the dangers of not regulating, not controlling oxygen therapy.
Absolutely. That's the reason why outside of the machine, you have the physician who has to know how to manage patients on ventilators and the danger of the gases that they're using, especially in babies. If you use too high oxygen concentration, the baby can go blind. Not only that, the oxygen can also damage the lungs because remember, oxygen is a toxic agent. We were we were not really born, to be honest with you, to inhale 21% oxygen. That's why the fetus is not in 21% oxygen. But when we were born, we are also equipped with antioxidants and a lot of the enzymes that will take care of the toxicity of oxygen because oxygen is a radical and it can produce damage. And the body is equipped for that. Unfortunately, the preterm infant has less defenses against oxygen toxicity. That's why it is more predisposed to the problems of oxygen toxicity. You're right. I mean, oxygen cannot just be given uh, right and left. It has to be regulated.
Regarding your fundraising, how are you actively fundraising, or how is Breath of Life, which I think is your fundraising arm, how is it actively fundraising?
By this method, by presentations, word of mouth, and and by personal solicitation. But as I said, eventually I'll run out of donors, you know, and I don't like to go back to the same person. But so far we have been we have a lot of generous people. There's one actually who's been giving ventilators right and left. I couldn't, basta humingi ako, sige, sige lang. So, there are many generous people that I am aware of.
And
But
your donors are both.
I solicit also. When I go to meetings, I solicit, I tell them about it and the need, and then I show them the video. And then they sabi, oh, I think I will donate. You may not necessarily donate a ventilator, but you can add towards the cost of a ventilator. So marami dyan, partly or full donor. Kaya lang kung full donor, they get to have their names on the ventilator itself that is being distributed.
And during a rehearsal, Rory made a suggestion about corporations
Yes.
approaching corporations through somebody you know, probably would
Yeah,
be the best way.
who can actually finance a company that can finance the ventilator and have it at their business, you know?
Buddy?
Yeah.
Oh. Buddy, it's Beth again.
Yeah, Beth.
Well, of course, I congratulate you for your tremendous work, and I really admire your having mentored many of our graduates who are now all over the Philippines doing neonatology. I think that's really the way to succeed through our students and our mentees. I was going to suggest for your a more productive distribution is perhaps to match the needs with the donors. Wherever in the Philippines there might be the most urgent need, and to match that with the donors. Like for instance, I think Tito Liga mentioned that somebody should donate to Nueva Ecija. I think it would be useful to have something like that.
Yeah, Tito has been very
To
instrumental.
match donors with recipients depending on the most urgent need.
Buddy, can I ask you to not share your screen anymore so we could go back to the entire.
I'm sorry.
To
Okay.
the,
How do I do that? Stop share. Okay.
yeah, stop share. Yeah, that's great. I'm going through the chat to see if there's any more question. Are there any more questions from?
Excuse me if I'm eating because I'm hungry. I'm just eating sunflower seeds. I have here Billy Cabellon. I can see him. And Cornelio Reformina, Beth, Arthur at the Artist. I think we had close to about 50 participants.
I think I saw 63. There
Okay.
were, at one point, we had 63 participants.
Yes, Rosario at the Artist, Melinda. Thank you for coming. Jimmy Lapus. Hey, Jimmy, how are you? Johnny and Mila Reyes here. Lina's iPod. Who's this Lina? Lina? I don't know. Linobla, maybe. This is Rory and then Edwin.
They're not bad.
Is this Edwin Palilea? No. Then Chuchi, my sister-in-law.
Hi, Dr. Ostrea.
Nanette. And then this is Tita Villanueva Uy, who is one of the experts who helped produce the Ostreavent II, and she's the neonatologist at PGH. I have the honor of having trained her, of course. She's an excellent neonatologist, and she is also a very ardent proponent and of the Ostreavent for infants.
Good morning, good evening, Dr. Ostrea. I would just like to acknowledge the other Filipino
Filipino doctors in the audience po. We
Okay.
have also here Dr. Mian Silvestre, who also trained under you. We have Dr. Che Nazaret, who was a fellow of PGH. We have Dr. Au Matias here, and I think also Dr. Bel Vitangcol from Quirino. And we have two pulmonologists po, si Dr. Kevin Bautista and Tina Losada. And we have the chairman of the Department of Pediatrics po, si Dr. Lorna Abad po, who's here. I
Yeah.
hope I didn't miss some of them.
Thank you for tuning in.
And we have Irena also, Dr. Irena, who was the fellow in charge of the Ostreavent orientation po at PGH. And of course, we have Dr. Greg Leonardo ho with us.
Was Greg with
And
us?
Joseph Aldrich Gaspar po also from Iloilo is with us po.
Yes, Dr. Greg Leonardo here from Pampanga. Hello to all.
Greg, did
Hello,
you receive
sir.
did you receive my email to you, or you are
I received a
interested in?
Bible message. I already responded. We need to talk after this.
Okay, because they need ventilators also. Then we have Jocelyn Fernando, Martin Saavedra, Victor. Yeah. I'm glad to see you all. Oh, Mian, hello, how are you? Is Mian still here? No. Lynn, Elna.
Hi, Doc. Hello, Dr. Austria. Mian here.
Yeah.
Congratulations po. Thank you for acknowledging my brother.
Yes,
Thank
not
you po,
only
si
that. Mian, by the
Melchor.
way, has the brainchild of the Unang Yakap.
Naku, Doc. Thank you.
Which
Thank you, Professor.
she was instrumental in the immediate care of the newborn infant, which has been neglected, and now it's almost universal, I think, in its applicability. And Mian was honored with an award, outstanding award for her accomplishment. I'm so proud of my previous fellows. They're really very accomplished. No? Alex, dami rin pala dito, ano.
Yes, I think we had quite a distinguished audience tonight. That's thanks to you, buddy.
Oh, even Matias is here. She received one of the ventilators. How's it doing in your area? Auring Matias. Yeah. Well, anyhow. Okay, any more questions? Are we ready? I mean, I thought we were going to, outside the ventilators, you wanted to talk on personal issues, UPSCA, whatever that is. No?
Well, we did say we'll go for 2 hours, and we are a little bit over that now.
Okay.
So I want to honor what we have said to the other guests. So does anyone want to ask any questions besides Ostreavent?
Hi, Jimmy. Congratulations, buddy. I'll try to solicit for you from my relatives and friends.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Your gift, as I said, is a gift that will keep on giving. Just think of that. Like if you give an Ostreavent for infants, those infants, thank you for giving them a chance in life. You know.
We need more doctors like you. Yung tunay na doctor with the heart. I think that's the most important. Yung brain, madaming may brains pero kukunti may puso.
Marami. Marami.
Jimmy, sabi nila ang mga UP daw utak at puso. So hindi lang utak. Utak at puso.
Well, I'm glad na in our class, class 68, saka kamukha si Buddy. Buddy, ikaw ba 66 o 65?
65. Class 65 si Buddy.
66 ang nagbigay ng 5 ventilators.
Mila, remember
Sorry.
I mentioned it, huh?
I saw it. I heard it.
Yeah, well, Class 70, to which I belong, celebrated our Golden Jubilee last year, 2020, but we didn't have a celebration because of the pandemic. But I'll try and get our classmates to donate one or two of your Ostreavent, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Buddy, Ruth Diaz is her classmate.
Ruth Bautista. Oh, why do you know Ruth Bautista? Is she from your area?
Yeah.
She's from Michigan. She's in Michigan, isn't she?
She already moved to California.
Ah, right. Nag-retire na doon. She likes the beach.
Yeah. Ruth was the previous president of the Upmasa, Michigan chapter.
Hi, Mila. I remember you as our medical resident in PGH.
Who is
Excellent.
Who is
Yes,
talking?
Beth.
Mila Reyes ba
Beth
yan?
Yeah,
Mila
Mila
Reyes.
Reyes.
Who is
Ah,
talking?
Beth Arceliana.
Oh, Beth. Hi, Beth.
You were a resident in medicine.
I remember you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I remember a
Classmate ko
lot.
si Frankie. Frankie Arceliana, classmate ko.
Oh, Tita, Mia and Silvestre, they all trained in Detroit with Buddy.
What Beth suggested, actually, Buddy, that's an excellent idea. Having different classes, having a campaign for different medical classes, her class 70, 71, 72, different classes to support one Ostreavent. And if you get each class to do one, that's a lot. That's a lot of Ostreavents. Or to have a class do it on their 25th anniversary or 30th anniversary as a special project, or 50th anniversary. Anyway, that Beth's idea just triggered that. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our Sumbayan today. It has been for me, a very informative Sumbayan, Buddy. And
Yeah.
because of your presentation, especially because some of us here are not medical, don't have the medical background, and it's quite an impressive invention, and we certainly wish you all the luck that this will somehow take off, because it's something that's can be of excellent use, especially in third world countries.
Yes, very much so. And as I said, the first objective is Philippines, of course, because it's very much needed, and then we'll branch out to other countries.
And if I did mention earlier about the Rotary, if you know somebody through the Rotary Club has a lot awards, global grants. You need a Rotary Club in the Philippines to partner with a Rotary Club in the US and submit a global grant. And through that global grant, it's more than one, it depends upon how much is raised. You can raise as much as you can. And through the Rotary Club, you can get that's a very good grant to look into through, as I said, you do need two clubs, one in the Philippines and one in the US, to partner. Now, turning now to the future, Sumbayan will go on for its season 2 in September, and it will have a new moderator, June Kalehesan. And so with that, unless anyone wants to has any more comment, I'd like to thank Buddy for a wonderful, wonderful evening, and to all of you for joining us tonight. and
Yeah, for
enjoy.
those of you who have placed some questions or some ideas in the chat, I don't know if we can save this, can we?
Well, let's see. How?
Because some of
But
them are
Rory, I realize you're the host now.
Yeah.
It's back to you. I don't know how it got back to you, but
Okay.
you're the host now. I think you can save it.
maybe I can just copy
We
and
recorded
paste.
the entire presentation, so everything is saved
Okay.
on the presentation.
Except there was a point when the recording stopped, and then Dr. Body restarted the recording, and it recorded onto his computer. So he will have to send that to you, Rory, and then you can have both.
Okay. All right. I didn't see that it had stopped recording on my computer because I did have to leave. My husband came back from a trip, so I had to greet him. However, I will review it, and then in the event that something is missing, I guess we're going to have to arrange to get that missing part.
Okay.
And I wonder when you review it, if you can do some editing. If you could edit.
Okay. I don't know. I've not edited a Zoom meeting yet.
I know.
Ask.
But anyway, something to think about.
Okay, we will think about it and see what we can do.
Yeah.
I was able to save the comments. I copied it and put it on board. So then I can go back and take a look at it.
So before you sign off, Effie and Lori and Lily, thank you very much for a fine job on Zumbayan for the past year.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for all of your.
And thank you, buddy. I miss your music. I hope when you come home, we get a chance to listen to you again.
Oh gosh, don't hold your breath because I have arthritis of my thumb, and that's the reason why I don't play much anymore. But I still practice because practice is what's needed when you have arthritis. So, by the way, are those beautiful cattleya that you have there and behind you, or is that just a photo, Beth?
That's a photo of my patio when I had these blooms. So it's actually my terrace, my patio.
So beautiful.
Which I saved, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm using it as a backdrop.
That's cattleya,
it's also,
right?
It's yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And Beth, I want to, following what you just said, I want to thank Lily for organizing tonight's Sumbayan. It was really through her efforts that we discovered Buddy. And through her efforts.
Actually, I was not paying attention to your invitation until you became persistent.
It was Nanette Hongko who pushed that through. And by the second time you finally responded, I knew you were probably handling a lot of emails, and it was very
yes.
connected, especially since I really, you didn't really know me from anybody. But it worked, and that's what's important.
I hope you can donate one to the hospital.
So if we're going to ask for people to donate, how much could we summarize again? How much would we ask them for one, if they would like to buy or donate money for one vent? How much do we ask them? 7,500? Was that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
$7,500 for the Ostreavent for infant and 10,000 for adults. Then you can just convert that to pesos.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go I'm going to go for the corporate people. I'm going to try to get them to come and donate constantly to you, Dr. Buddy.
Thank you so much, Rory.
Good luck. Wish me luck, but
yeah,
that'll be my goal, is try to get you as many ventilators that you can give away to the people of the Philippines and elsewhere.
And as I said, if you have my email, I think you have my email address.
I believe so. I took pictures.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so you can definitely email me or call me.
Okay, we'll do that.
If you need any help or clarification.
Thank you.
And thank you so much too for your very good intentions and
Thank you, Rory, for
this was
taking
really a very these are the things I really like to present, you know. besides 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 seeing patients. But actually now I'm being spared from seeing more patients because they know that I'm working on research and so they want to relieve me of the I've been practicing since I was 32 years old and now I am 80 years old, so people say dapat retired ka na. Pero sabi ko ayoko naman kasi mag-atrophy yung brain ko pag nag-retire ako, so that's why.
Do you still teach?
Yes, but I do research and I have my fellows work on the research with me, collaborate, and we're doing one now. It will probably start the end of the month.
Why don't you tell this group about that symposium you were telling us about?
Oh yes, that's good. You know, from 2003 to 2013, I have an US NIH funding to conduct a study here in the Philippines. The study site is the Philippines to learn or to determine the adverse effect of exposure to environmental pollutants or toxicants on the development of their infants. And we have amassed considerable data, which I think should be really sent out to the Filipino stakeholders like the government, educators, uh, the public health people. And because I think the information we have is more useful to the Philippines than if we were publishing these things in international journals where some of them may not even come here or get here. So I am going to, together with Dr. Tita Villanueva, we're going to plan on presenting a Zoom symposium on the data that we have accumulated in the Philippines that are related to children's IQ. You know, uh, there are many factors that affect children's IQ, and sad to say, based on our study of close to 600 children, that the IQ of the children, and the study site was in Malolos, has not improved since 1972. And that's very sad because the prosperity of a country is dependent on the IQ of the population, of the children and the population. And there are many factors to that, not so much of the environmental pollutants, which is very surprising to me because those are that the mothers that are exposed to the pesticides, like principally from Baygon, most of them were exposure at home. The infants recover in terms of their IQ and performance. But the major factors that contribute to the low IQ are, of course, poverty, domestic violence, nutrition, uh, besides the pollutants. And so we'd like to address this. And information given to the public is probably one of the best ways to do this. So a virtual symposium will be, I'm planning to have that in November and hopefully get a lot of participants to it who will gain from the knowledge that we have accumulated for 10 years. Also, that's one of the objectives of NIH funding. You have to disseminate your information so that the people will use it. You cannot just have funding and just let it go, publish. That's nothing. You have to make it a useful information that can be used by the stakeholders to improve their uh, way of providing and uh, health and treatment of patients who are sick. A very good example of our study. Okay. Now, everybody's malunggay, malunggay, malunggay. They think malunggay is a wonder tree food because it is very rich in a lot of nutrients, protein, uh, nutrients such as vitamins and minerals and carbohydrates, and everything is good in malunggay. In fact, if you look at where countries where malunggay is actually prevalent and dominant, there will be in proper countries where there's severe malnutrition, which tells us that God has provided us with His wonder food, wonder plant, and yet we're not using it. So eventually we became aware that malunggay is good, but in the absence of data, it was funny how they were using it. For,
No.
for instance, where we wanted to improve the IQ of preschool children by feeding them nutrients snack fortified with malunggay. You know, the DSW was actually providing snacks to the preschool children by placing in one cauldron of lugaw a cup of malunggay, thinking that that's enough. Of course, they're doing that because they don't have any information. That's not enough. You have to have enough malunggay there for its nutrient. So that's what I'm saying. In the absence of information and data, people are just going to do things, uh, in a haphazard manner, thinking that they're doing good, but it's not. So that's why I want to uh, establish this symposium so that we can disseminate information. And we have a lot of data, very good data, which we could disseminate.
Yep,
Buddy, this is a very timely and relevant project of yours to disseminate information on your data of the IQ of Philippine children, because you must have read in the news that the Filipino children performed the worst
Very
among
bad.
in this region, as far as
Very
IQ and the basic skills of reading, writing, arithmetic.
exactly, Beth.
So
Exactly.
it's really deteriorated throughout the years. So it's a concern for DepEd, it's concern for developmental pediatricians, for food and nutrition research of the Philippines. I think all the stakeholders need to be able to learn this information from your study. So perhaps even hospital conferences might help, with Zoom conferences with pediatrics and the pulmonologists, and as far as environmental pollutants and so forth. So maybe not just one symposium, but a series of eco symposia.
Well, as a starter, we're going to have. I thought it would all be okay in one day, but I was told by the sponsor, which is Unilab, we're trying to tap Unilab they want a 2-day symposium. I can have a 2-day symposium. I have enough data for 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, but it's hard to get the speakers. but we will have a 2-day symposium, Beth. And that probably be in November. And
Okay.
we're organizing it, and I already have committed speakers, and it's growing. And so we will have a good symposium because our data is very relevant to the Philippines. And as you said, it was a pity for me to see our children with low IQ. The IQ has not improved since 1972. The IQ was about 72, 75. That's less than one standard deviation from the mean. Yeah. And
Terrible.
Tita Villanueva Uy and I did a study of that snacks for the children in preschool, and we improved the IQ of the children with malunggay snacks. But it has to be the right amount. We're gonna just put 1 cup of balungayan in a cauldron of lugaw. That's nothing. That's a drop in the ocean. So data is important in order to people to do things right. That's why I want to address this information we have to the stakeholders, the government, the different institutions, the educators, the doctors, the public health people. Hopefully with a virtual, this is one advantage I see with the COVID, we are able to do virtual symposium and reach different areas of the Philippines rather than have them come to one auditorium. That's better. So
I
this
am
is one advantage of the virtual symposium. Look at that. Our virtual symposium is both Philippines and US. You see? And so
you have
never can you have this thing occur.
Yeah. I'm sure that you will be able to uh, put together a great symposium because judging from what our audience today, you have a lot of contacts. So, so with that, I'd like to wish you good luck on that November symposium, and do let us know. There might be some interest among us. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and uh, wish you a good night. It's almost midnight here on the eastern coast, at least. So thank you very much, buddy.
You're welcome. And thank you
Thank you,
for hosting
buddy.
this.
Good to
Thank you
see
very
you.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care, buddy.
And more power to you.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you.
Take care.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
To the
Thank you.
organizers.
Thank you, Effie. Thank you, Lily. Thank you,
Yeah.
Rory.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, so
Thank you,
glad.
organizers.
Thank you. So glad to see you all.
Thank you, Erwin. I think you were too late for my thanks earlier. Sino pa ba?
Sorry, I'm
See
came
you
late.
all. Yeah. See you all maybe in a
It
month
was good.
more or less.
Okay.
So good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.